Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. In this video, we've got Shawn Booth, the winner of Kaitlyn Bristowe's season of The Bachelorette, talking about how he now relates to Kaitlyn in a way that he might not have before after discussing text messages he sent Kaitlyn. Now, you might remember, I was on Kaitlyn Bristowe's podcast a couple months ago where she was discussing for the first time that she received text messages from Shawn being like, can you tone it down? You know what I mean? Like talking about our relationship and airing out all of our secrets and this and that. And Kaitlyn, of course, she shares her relationships. Like that's what she does. Now that Shawn's got a podcast, he says he can kind of get it. So we're going to play some different clips there. Do me a solid. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals for stand-up show updates and all that jazz. I've got a show tonight in Hollywood, tomorrow night in North Hollywood. I've got shows in East Hollywood next week. And then I'm also going to be in Seattle August 24th, so you can see me there at comedy/bar. Tickets are on sale. Link in the description or comment section below. And let's jump right into this. So we've got She's All Batch podcast. I'll play a few clips from their reels, and then we'll play the audio of what was said, plus what was said on Almost Famous. Have a listen.
So they sit us down in the room, we're on the couch, and Joe walks through the door.
That's a big smile, buddy. Big smile.
They're like, hey, Shawn, let me check out your mic pack. Your mic's not working. Walk out of the room. When this show aired, it showed Joe walking in the room, and then it showed us saying Kaitlyn's name, and then me just sitting there, and then me walking out of the room as if I couldn't
mad about the date.
I couldn't even handle him talking about her. So things like that.
All right, so, which led to Shawn Booth getting this edit like he was super jealous and manipulative and controlling. And look, from what we can tell, he's as normal as anybody else out there. And by that, I mean he'll probably have his days where he is jealous and he'll have his days where he's confident and everything in between. Now we've got Nick Thompson in the comment section saying, wow, I'm shocked. And then Danielle, of course, Nick and Danielle dated on Love is Blind, saying it's so funny watching the stuff they cut together. We remember Blake Horstman was filmed on Bachelor in Paradise being angry as he ran away. Turns out he was just going to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Maybe he looked angry on the beach, but the sand was hot. He's like, It's like, oh, he's huffing and puffing. It's like, no, he's just trying not to burn his toes. You know what I mean? Either way, will Shawn Booth get sued for this? That's the question, because we know you're sharing trade secrets here, Shawn, so be careful.
I don't live in that Bachelor world, and everybody will try and stay in that Bachelor world. If you go behind doors and talk to people about all this stuff, they'll tell you a whole different thing. But when they get in front of a camera, when they do interviews, when they want to stay on good terms with that show, they'll be like, oh yeah, everything's great. This person's awesome. It's sad. I think there's a lot of fake people.
A lot of fake people. And I'll put it this way, if I could defend the fake people out there, there's a lot of people trying to survive. And if that means they got to kiss ass to somebody to get them on their podcast or stay in the Bachelor world, I get it. Look, I make my show Driving with Dave. I'm trying to get non-Bachelor contestants. I'm trying to get non-Bachelor people that are very interesting. So far, the non-Bachelor people on the show have not performed well. And that's okay. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to slowly branch out of the niche. But sometimes it can feel like for any content creator that you're just stuck in this glass wall or cage of emotions because you can't get out of that. Now, next week, I'm going to have a non-Bachelor interview. I'm actually going to do it today, which is why we might be light on content. But this Saturday, I've got Andrew Spencer. Andrew Spencer's got a great story to tell. Is it any greater than somebody else's story? No, it's just that's the audience we have, and it's very searchable. So I understand why people kiss ass and stick within the Bachelor niche, because it's kind of self-preservation, versus Shawn Booth has a luxury of being in the fitness world, a luxury that he built, but also, he was engaged to one of the greatest bachelorettes of all time, so he's got a relatively large Instagram following, so he doesn't necessarily need The Bachelor the way that some people might. That's just a fair assessment, if you ask me. But I can understand how it would be annoying to think, oh, so-and-so's acting a certain way just because they're trying to, favor, get some favoring from other Bachelor alum. It's a real small high school community. You know what I mean? It's just the worst. All right, so Shawn was also on the Almost Famous podcast. We'll get back to She's All Batch in a second, but I just wanted to give them a shout out. So let's watch what he was saying over there.
Wait a second here, Ben. So you guys kind of knew, separate from Shawn, and then you just found out last week that they're having a baby together. Did you have any idea that the two of them had any relationship?
I had no clue. No.
Well, she was at your wedding with me.
Well, was she your date?
Wait a
All right,
second.
so Shawn Booth now has a baby on the way with this lady named Dre, who's a photographer, and Ben Higgins knew Dre separately. How do they all know each other? Dre's not even in the Bachelor world. Okay, so let's go over to what Shawn had to say about his relationship where it stands now with Kaitlyn Bristowe, not Kaitlyn Booth, oh boy, and what their text messages were like when he was trying to ask her to stop talking about him on the podcast.
Some type of podcast that I sent to her.
She did. Or did we read it or no?
I don't know. I don't remember specifics.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I sent her a text just, kindly asking her to stop, I guess, talking so much about our past, like personal things in our relationship. And, because I always get pinged by the TMZs and the People and Us weeklies every few months being like, hey, do you want to comment on what Kaitlyn said in her podcast or said on this? And so I've just never responded. So I just asked her if she could stop. And I was also like, well, I'm contradicting myself because I'm talking about it now on my podcast. But I just sent her a message. She sent me one back, and then that was kind of it. So,
was it like a positive message back? Like okay, yeah, I'll stop. Thanks. Or how did it go?
Yeah, no, it was positive. I guess it was positive. Yeah, it was positive.
And now again, we already heard this on, if we go over to it right now, on Off the Vine. So we just searched Off the Vine, Dave Neal. We already heard her version of it, which of course was that there was a lot of, on this podcast, she said there was a lot of pleasantries. Like she responded with corporate speak, which is fair too. She's trying to keep it cordial. She's also in another relationship, so she can't, she respectful to Jason Tartick. She responds in a way that's not too personal. Absolutely.
Wait, speaking of text messages, because we listen, we're in the booth fans. We need to ask you about, you talked about how Kaitlyn accidentally sent a text message to you that was meant for someone else.
Yeah.
But then you move on and you don't go into detail, and that may be purposeful and that's fine.
Yeah.
But we can't not ask.
Yeah.
How did you know it was meant for someone else? If you're not willing to share what specifically was said, if you could give any type of detail on how you knew it wasn't meant for you.
Yeah, because I know 100% because I said, I mentioned something about Jason, and she sent me a message back that she thought she was sending to Jason, but she sent it to me.
How do you know it was supposed to be to Jason?
Did she say like Jason?
Like, hi, Jason.
Yeah.
I knew. It's
God.
It was very clear she was trying to have a conversation with him about that and coming up with something in regards to that.
Okay, like it could have been, oh my God, he's asking me about you. What do I say? Send to you. Oh, asking me about you, comma, Jason, comma, what do I say? And then that's like 100% accurate. Like that was not meant for me. That was meant for someone else.
I will say it was 100% accurate. It was meant for Jason.
Okay.
So Shawn does a good job of not taking the bait, but you got to give Jackie and Stephanie credit here for trying to triangulate what the hell Kaitlyn Bristowe sent to Shawn that was meant for Jason. I mean, could it have been a nude photo? Yeah, well, no, let's not speculate on that. But it was probably, like the ladies had suggested, something, Reality Steve just shared this where he accidentally sent a message to Nick Vial, this is years ago, where the message said, oh, he's such a little shit, but he meant to send it to somebody else. It's just one of those things. Our brain is always snitching on us. You want to talk trash about your friend and you accidentally text that to the friend. It's like, look, come on, double check who you're sending your messages to. We've all done it.
We'll leave it at that.
You guys can ask her, and I'm sure, she talks about everything that's happened in a relationship, but she hasn't mentioned anything about that. I know she's been asked about it, which is...
The text heard around the world. And you're saying it wasn't meant for you. And we went into on our podcast, like everyone's had that moment. We all have had embarrassing moments where you
all texted people like when you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Fucking nightmare. And we talked about on our podcast, like, what is the worst side? What is the worst situation to be in? The person sending the text message or the person receiving the text message?
Sending.
In this situation, while your side is pretty bad, I'm sure on her end, she was like, what the fuck? Like, I just totally fucked up. Did you respond? Did you call her out and say like, hey, I knew, like, I know, or did you just?
Oh yeah, no, I responded. Yeah. That's when I got into, saying that was the last time I'd spoke to her or saw her, like, just like, hey, done. Like, this is, cause then that's when I put 2 and 2 together that she was with Jason. So I'm like, I'm out of here.
Well, and we have, now, to defend Kaitlyn here, we don't know the timeline from when Kaitlyn and Shawn broke up to when Kaitlyn and Jason started dating. There was no overlap. We have to remember, no revisionary history. Now, Kaitlyn, because here's how we know. When Kaitlyn and Jason first met, it was on Off the Vine podcast. And during that, she was already done with Shawn Booth. Now, could there have been a scenario where they had broken up, but there were still some lingering feelings, maybe a post-breakup hookup? There could have been so many scenarios that happened, but what's fair is fair. Like, if Kaitlyn and Shawn broke up, and Shawn had a podcast, and then Shawn starts hooking up with Andrea, Kaitlyn can't be upset. You could be upset, but you can't fault the other person for moving on, right? They always say the best way to get over someone is to get over somebody else, right? That's the whole saying, right? So either way, it does. But Shawn's also rightfully able to say, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like, it's okay to want to go no contact after that. I don't think that's petty for someone to want to cut somebody else out of their life once they're broken up.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's another thing where it's like, people, I think it's always tough to judge someone if you don't know what's going on, right? If you don't know what's going on with the situation, you could have one side of the story for years. You have somebody saying everything and somebody that doesn't say anything at all. And then you want to just assume things. What was really tough about that was that message was sent. I knew she had a relationship with him behind closed doors. They're trying to figure it out how to make it public. And it was directly after our breakup. So I
see, directly after our breakup. So there's no overlapping here. And also, I don't know what Shawn knows here, so I'm just hypothetical, but I don't know if that makes her guilty of being with Jason Tartick. She could have been just texting him as a guy who was about to be on her show.
I knew that was going on. And then like a month or two later, I got some pictures taken of me with another female, put out to the tabloids, whatever. I was at some event, had some girls, she came back to Nashville. And people went on their podcast talking about how they couldn't believe I moved on so fast. And she had something to do with that and making, I can't believe he would do that, or he's moving on so fast and all this. And I'm like, you guys have no idea.
Right. And that's before she was public with Jason?
Yeah. So it's like that was all going on behind closed doors. And then I get kind of crucified for being with another girl. And everybody's just completely sending me all types of hate. And some people were kind of fueling that fire. And I was like, that's pretty messed up.
Some people.
Okay. There it is, folks. Some people fueling that fire. Could he be referencing Kaitlyn Bristowe? Or could it have been somebody else? We don't know, folks. Either way, look, the fact that we are several years later and we can still be talking about this just goes to show what a wild story it is. So on some level, Shawn relates to Kaitlyn Bristowe. He says, I admitted that I contradicted myself, because now he's talking about his relationship. And on another level, there's so much, I don't want to call it bitterness, but there's so much left unsaid where Shawn thinks, oh, I knew you moved on right after me and this and that. And it's a little petty to talk about, but at the same time, they were asking him these questions and maybe he feels like, hey, she's talking about it, I'll talk about it. It's like any relationship, just like John Hersey and Katie Thurston, which, by the way, of course, John and Katie dated on a much shorter term than Kaitlyn Bristowe and Shawn Booth. Kaitlyn Bristowe and Shawn Booth were engaged and this and that. But it's like John Hersey and Katie Thurston, who they said, we're going to remain friends and keep it cordial. And then the resentment kicks in, the bitterness kicks in, and you go, you know what? F that guy. And then it becomes a he said, she said, and all that jazz, which normally happens. Very rare that both sides take the high road. All it takes is one side to throw a dagger at it. It's a melee, folks. All right, well, look, here we go. Tomorrow on the Dave Neal Show, we've got Andrew Spencer, so make sure to catch up on all of your Dave Neal Show videos. It's a different YouTube channel. You might not be getting the alerts because you're not following it. I'll post the link right here. You can click right on this video. Go catch up. Tammy. We had Corinne Olympios, Katie Thurston. We have blogger, power bloggers, Jess Ambrose, Reality Steve, Andrew Spencer's this week, and so many other awesome episodes. So go check that out. Susie Evans and a lot more coming up. So make sure to subscribe and check that out. That'll drop around 8 a.m. Pacific tomorrow, Saturday morning. That's your Saturday morning cartoon. All right, well, we'll have our podcast, Bachelor Rush Hour, coming to you next. Bye, everybody.